What makes a villain? A villain, also known as an antagonist, is a cruel and malicious person who is involved or devoted to wickedness or crime. They are also referred to as the bad guy of a play and books, movies, TV shows, and our regular day lives. But what really drives such a normal person down such an evil and destructive path? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. Jerry Bruce Jenkins is an American novelist who is best known for co-authoring a series of books with Tim LaHaye. But he also owns his own website. In this website, he has a checklist of 14 different points that make a good villain. In the next two slides, you will have a moment to look through his 14-point checklist. This checklist was made to tell writers how to write a good villain. But these points can also be seen in real-life examples, including Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. Hitler was born in 1889 and can easily be considered one of the most evil people in history. He was the head of the Nazi Party and the German government during World War II. He also carried out the Holocaust, which killed more than 6 million people. We can easily see a representation of his life in this biography by Ian Kershaw. But what really occurred in Hitler's life that made him go down such an evil path? Hitler ranks incredibly high compared to Jenkins' checklist. Remarkably, at a 10 out of 14 points match up with his lifestyle. Hitler had a very dark past. In Jenkins' list, he said that villains were real people whom terrible things have happened to. And that's exactly what happened to Hitler. Hitler was abused as a kid. His father beat him constantly, and he lost his mother to illness. Dr. Alice Miller, who was a child psychologist, wrote an article on Hitler. She stated that Hitler's trauma in his childhood could have pushed him down a whole different path than normal children. Hitler was actually an aspiring artist, but after being kicked out of artist school, he even had that dream ripped away from him and left him only one option, the army. Jenkins also said a good villain should be intelligent, persuasive, and should be convinced that he was a good guy. In the army, Hitler did a lot of good for his country. He rose through the ranks quickly. Hitler also was a master of his words. His speeches gathered him massive amounts of followers, and this gave him extreme amounts of power also. Hitler really did think he was the good guy. He pulled Germany out of the Great Depression and was considered a hero amongst all Germans, and he didn't care how much blood he spilled while he was doing this. This really did show Hitler's reputation around the world after World War II. In a survey conducted by IB Times, Hitler is ranked number 1 by students from 57 different countries, which does make him a villain. Joseph Stalin could easily be considered as evil as Hitler or even more evil. He was the leader of the Soviet Union during World War II, but his path to this throne was very violent. His only competition was Leon Trotsky, but Stalin had his entire family executed to ensure his power. Jenkins stated that a good villain should be merciless, even to the innocent, and Stalin was definitely this. Stalin killed millions of his own citizens. Anyone who stood in his way or said or even did anything that was a threat to him was immediately executed in cold blood. Stalin was a cold-hearted man and would never hesitate to kill, making him a terrifying villain. The world we live in today have a lot of villains and terrifying people. But how about we move on to a more fictional and popular platform? The Marvel Universe has shown its audience thousands of new and interesting villains. And one of its newest villains shows promise to be the best cinematic villain ever. In the new hit Marvel movie Black Panther, Marvel introduced a new cunning villain, Eric Killmonger. Eric Killmonger is played by Michael B. Jordan in the movie. Jerry Jenkins said a good villain has to go through an emotional trauma in his childhood. Eric Killmonger's father was killed in the movie. This left Eric an orphan throughout his entire life. This trauma really changed him to become a hard and merciless man. Eric killed anyone to get what he wants. He even killed his own cousin. Although Eric was convinced what he was doing was right, he was trying to give other orphans around the world, just like him, control and power, even if it meant killing half the world's population. Jerry Jenkins also said a villain needs to be jealous, especially of the hero. In the movie, Eric Killmonger's cousin, who was the protagonist, was considered royalty in his state of Africa. Eric Killmonger practiced and prepared his entire life to take over his cousin's throne and end his life. Even though his intentions were pure, his path to his objective were brutal and vicious, making him a perfect villain. DC Comics has always been Marvel's competitor in the cinematic and comic book business because of one key villain, the Joker. In the movie The Dark Knight, directed by Christopher Nolan, we see a crazy and ruthless villain. But what about his origin? Most people, when they think about the Joker, all they see is a crazy killer. But once he had a normal life. He even had a wife and a job. He used to be part of a circus. He used to put on his makeup every day and just do his job, until one day it all changed. Some people intruded his home and killed his wife and forced him to do a job he didn't want to do. He had to act like a supervillain. But when Batman came in and kicked him into a bucket full of acid, he turned into a maniac. Jerry Jenkins did say that a villain should have a traumatizing event happen to him, and this was Joker's. The acid changed his entire body. It turned him into a crazy man and even changed his mind. This turned him into the ruthless villain that we see Batman facing every day in the movie and in the comics. The Joker faced hardship throughout his entire life, and right when he almost had the ideal life with his wife, he had it all ripped away and turned him into the alone person he is. In this quote, we see a clear representation of this. A man with nothing to fear is a man with nothing to love. What really makes a villain? Through careful analysis, all the examples I looked at had many common points. The most common were that they all had a dark and traumatizing past that really changed them forever. They all also are ruthless and merciless. They will do anything to get what they want. Overall, the best and most important source was Jerry Jenkins. His checklist clearly goes over characteristics of a bad guy and shows people what really makes a villain.